Welcome to the UIUC Talkshow. Our goal with this show is to introduce you to the most interesting people with the most interesting ideas. Today we have Professor Reuben A. Buford May, also known as Stuckey. Welcome.
The Stuck. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm also really excited because you are a person that sometimes with some people you can just tell when they're just living for themselves without, the opinions of others. Like they're just living life for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And something we were talking about earlier is that with the school and sometimes with just life in general. And we see that sometimes we just see that, sometimes people are just like not thinking for themselves, like just going through the motions without really thinking at all. And I told him that in a world of crazy people,
Mm-hmm.
the normal ones are quote unquote crazy.
Okay, maybe so.
Do you think about that a lot? Because
Yeah.
you are someone that it's sometimes thought to be crazy or whatever.
So I think it's fascinating. I don't know how much of my background you will explain, but I've been rapping in public on the corner since 2011. And the number of people that I've encountered on the streets or on campus is pretty interesting. And a lot of people do perceive me as, I've had people perceive me as homeless. I've had people perceive me as mentally unstable. I've had people perceive me as, police officers see me as a potential threat or problem. And so it's really fascinating to see that people think of me that way when what I'm really experiencing is a great sense of joy from being able to do something I love to do. So I don't worry too much about how other people see me, except for when it comes to issues where it's a potential danger of some sort. And I just go about having a good time.
You tell the story of how sometimes one time a student like gave you some like lyrics on card like, hey, like rap it, because like you would tell like, I don't know the lyrics, I would need to learn it in order to rap in the class.
Mm-hmm.
And what you did after is that you started going in the streets as a way to practice and grow your confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I did actually something very similar. So I moved to the US in 2016, and of course I didn't know the language or anything, but my teacher saw me. I was like motivated and everything. She was, hey, join the debate team.
Ah.
And I could barely speak. I really didn't know anything, but I went, whatever. And I go up there. People were saying like, hello, how are you? I could not understand anything.
Mm.
And then at some point, I think I understood, hey, you want to go or something. So I went up there, and I think that moment of doing something so out of my comfort zone or so out of the ordinary pushed me to do things like that I thought would not be possible. Like, talking with you today or things I've done in the past.
Right.
And I think getting to the level takes, someone to tell you, or like a huge effort, because it's really hard to do it on your own. So you don't come, one day, like for you to be doing such things, it requires something. So what was it for you, and how do you get to that level?
Yeah. So with respect to the creativity side, the performance side, it's really funny because I started thinking about this earlier, that when I was younger, my brothers and I used to love to watch Michael Jackson, and, we kind of, dance. We loved the Temptations and those stuff. And so my mother would always encourage us. And then we would go to family gatherings and they'd say, hey, we want to perform for you all. And they, parents and older aunts or whatever, they're like, yeah, okay, we'll watch it. And then so they give you audience, right? And so I think really for me that this thing was being cultivated at that time as a very young person, but it wasn't until I got a lot older and the student actually challenged me. It was rap music that I had been creating, but I didn't memorize the lyrics. I just rapped, recorded the raps, and then She heard it one day. She saw me on YouTube, and she was like, "When are you going to do that?" I said, "I can't perform because I don't know the lyrics." And she kind of pushed me. But I'll tell you what, just being pushed at that point doesn't really do it. Like there's something after someone opens you up to an idea. There's some process you have to go through for yourself to decide, okay, let me just go. And then when you go is when you're in the moment is when you feel like it doesn't really matter if you fail to succeed, that you're actually just doing it, right? And so that's how I was the first time that I rapped on the corner. Before I got to the corner, before I got to the public sphere, before I got before an audience, I actually practiced a lot in the mirror, the same way people tell you, you're preparing a speech, talk to the mirror. You wake up in the morning, I feel great, I'm confident, right? You want those kinds of, this way of reinforcement. And it was gradual, and then that's when I decided, let me just go and do it. And I just stepped out and I did it. And it was really weird because I'm seeing myself from here at the top out of the body, but also seeing myself from how people are seeing me. It's just a weird kind of feeling. But I think you have those someone initially opens you up to an idea, and then you think about it for yourself, and then you decide to take that plunge. And once you do that, then you're in the moment. And once you realize you can do it, it doesn't matter anymore how it felt, how nervous you were before it started. So.
When are you going next to the quad? We would love to do that.
Well, so it's sometimes random, but I have a teaching schedule, so I don't do it on the days where, I'm not prepared to do it, because in the summertime I sweat a lot. Like I really, like it's energy pouring all over me. But I might do it tomorrow. Who knows?
mean, and seriously, like,
okay.
let us know.
Okay. Well, it's really like I'm sitting at the office desk and I'm working. I might have a block, or I might be thinking about a wonderful idea and something is clicking, or I might just be down. Whatever it is, when I go do that, then it's that's what I mean when it's random. It's inside of a specific time frame, but it's still very random because it's on how I feel. And if you see me out, I could be angry, I could be sad, I could be happy. It's just what I do to kind of relieve. So yeah, maybe tomorrow. Probably tomorrow for real. I'm serious.
Actually?
Yeah.
All right. If I see you, I'll join you.
Okay.
And actually that feeling is very addictive.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, it's been so. Last semester, I told you, I started at the debate team, super nervous, couldn't even talk, and didn't know any English, of course. So I think I said the same word like 100 times. But you got to the point where I craved that feeling for some. So in last October, I actually did. So I heard there was this talent show for whatever, and I was like, yeah, I'll I don't have any talents or anything, but I thought, okay, maybe I could do a stand-up comedy. And of course, I've never done anything like that. And I thought, maybe who cares? Maybe 5 people will show up, whatever. But turns out the talent show was at Fallinger, and there were almost 300 people.
Wow.
And my idea was whatever, who cares? I'm just gonna go and just make up whatever goes.
Oh.
And I didn't.
That's risky.
It is quite risky.
Yeah.
But just being there, you have 300 people or whatever, and they're seeing you and judging you and all these things, and just sometimes you just have to let it go, just talk and whatever comes out. And like you said, it's very risky because things may come out, but such a fun experience because you such a weird and addictive feeling of risk and uncertainty and so I love that feeling. So I totally get what you mean by doing those experiences like that.
I mean, the truth is that I never really liked live performances. Like artists, I could appreciate them. Everything had been tweaked in the studio, so it's very refined. And so when you go hear a live performance, people are like singing. I heard a crack, and right, But when I start performing myself, I can go to any performance now and lock in with the performer because I know exactly what they're experiencing when they're doing this whole thing. So for me, it kind of awakened an appreciation for other creatives and artists when I started doing it myself. And it is addictive to a certain extent. I mean, I feel like if I don't go some days, I'm like, I should have went today, or So it's one of those things. And I'm not really doing it for the people there.
Right.
I've had concerts before, And the largest concert I ever performed for was probably like 5,000 people at Kyle Field, which is the football stadium at Texas A&M. They had some special event, and I performed there. And it was just like a regular thing by that time. I was like, hey, this is what I do, so I really enjoy it. But it gave me a better appreciation for people who were constantly performing and engaging their audiences and relating to people a certain kind of way.
And you have performed in the Chicago House of Blues and also Hard Rock in Seattle, so you definitely have experience of what it's like to do those things. So you went to Aurora University, and then you decided to do a PhD at the University of Chicago in sociology. And I'm curious, what were some of the things that you grew up doing that led you to the path you're in? Like when did you know you had it? Like when did you know you wanted to do what you're doing now?
Yeah, so when I was in undergrad, I wasn't very sure about what I wanted to do. I got ready to graduate, and my mom was like, hey, you should go to law school. You like to argue. And I found out law school is much more than just using your vocal ability or your verbal skills or whatever. But it was a lot of reading and writing, analysis, and it's a lot of work. And so I went to law school, failed out, came back home. My mom was like, hey, son, you should go back to school for business. Just in case you didn't know, my mom really cares a lot about education, so she just kept pushing me. And I said, I don't want to do business. And then I went to looking through the book, the catalog at DePaul University, and I saw sociology. And I decided, hey, this really connects with me. Like, it makes me feel like I think it's something I'd be interested in. And I began taking courses at DePaul, and I met this professor. Again, a person opens you up to an idea. It's the one thing that kind of opens you up. And he said to me one day after class, he said, have you ever thought about getting a PhD? And I said, no. He says, you're smart. You should get a PhD. Okay, first of all, this is the first time somebody's like, oh, you're smart. Besides mom, mom was always going to say, hey, great job, son. Keep your head up. Don't, but he said that to me, and it opened me up to that idea. And then I had to do some other things to get through that. But I realized in the field of study that not only did I have him as a kind of a guide, but that there's some things that I've been working on since the age of 11. I'd always kept a journal. So I'd write a daily journal. And it was a teacher who started me with that. They were like, hey, you should just write free expression. Don't worry about grammar or anything like that. And I discovered that in sociology, the skill of observing, reflecting, writing, documenting were all useful tools for being effective in the profession. And so it's when I began to connect the things I did in the past with the things that I was learning that I began to feel like, okay, I'm in a very, very good spot. And of course, you have affirmation from professors along the way that kind of say, hey, you're doing a good job. And it happened to me when I went to the University of Chicago. William Julius Wilson, who was a MacArthur Fellow, big deal guy, ended up teaching at Harvard, finished his career not too long ago. And he said to me one day, I said something in a meeting, he goes, that's brilliant. What does it feel like to have someone who's really, really smart tell you that you're smart or you said something really smart? It's really, really encouraging. And so all those things kind of came together to help me think about sociology as a profession and to see it as something viable and something that I could really get involved with and do.
Yeah, and I think, and like you said, it's sort of like when you saw it, you just, boom, it made sense. And you were not afraid to go down the path. And I think, so something I found interesting in one of your books is that you would go to this, bars and, what you would call nightlife, and you would explore that. And I remember you went to Georgia, right? And you would explore what fun would mean. And, we're on college campus. And, fun could be it's a very subjective thing. But I think there's certainly an objective meaning to the question. So what have you learned about what fun means and what is fun for you?
So it's actually fascinating you would say that fun is subjective. For most people it is. But there's also the prototypical, stereotypical thing that people consider fun in college, and that's, of course, partying, spring break trips. Not necessarily engineers, right? You guys don't take time out, but this is like the stereotypical thing. And what I discovered is that people are very much engaged in not only enjoying themselves as individuals, but they begin to have these collective kind of cohesions of groups that may limit interaction with different groups. But this is how they have their fun. So it's like, I call the concept in the book integrated segregation. And this idea that people are physically close to one another, but socially distant. So you have groups here, groups there, and then not necessarily having engagement or interaction. And I found that fascinating. They were able to have fun, but fun was predicated upon them being able to maintain the cohesion of their groups as they were doing and enjoying themselves. What's fun for me? I mean, honestly, I think I kind of live a boring life, except for creating music, thinking about deep kind of intellectual questions, sociological questions, watching people, irrespective of the context. So whether it's in the cafeteria here on campus, or if it's in the union on campus, or if it's in a nightclub setting, or if it's at a football game, or it's just watching people engage with one another and connect with one another, I consider that to be fun. And that dominates a lot of what I do, even when I'm not documenting it or writing about it. And I'm a very introspective person, so I love to teach. And a student will say something in class, and I'll think about that for 2 days to the next time I see them, and I'll say, I was thinking about this the whole time or whatever. So I consider that to be fun as well. So those are kind of the what I see as fun in my life.
So you mentioned like you've been to a lot of places where you observe people, like football games, nightlife. What is something that you've found to be common regardless of whichever place you are?
Yeah. So what I think is common is kind of sort of that people, they have both verbal and nonverbal exchanges, and the further you are away from the people, the less likely you are to hear the verbal. So seeing people just by their movements and having a sense about what's going on in that conversation has been like a consistent thing you can see, even absent the words. Someone goes, oh, and you don't hear the, oh, but you see it, or they're engaging someone, or they turn and give a high five to a stranger, and the stranger's like, oh yeah, so you see those things, and I think that's fascinating to see, no matter what context you're in, to see that people are engaging in this verbal and nonverbal communication, and they're actually giving great signals to one another, and sometimes there's miscommunication as well, which can lead to lots of conflict. But for me, it's just seeing the complexity of those kind of interchange that I enjoy.
Yeah, I truly enjoy thinking about those questions. And, for you are an example of like how you can change a very like interesting thing. So there's a very viral video on the internet, and it's basically this person who, basically they are on this beach or whatever, and they're like a bunch of people. And then this person stands up and you start dancing the music. Start dancing, and then someone sees the person and they go, just dancing. And then everyone's like, oh my God, what are they doing? They're crazy. And then 2 more people join. Oh my, look at these people, are so crazy. 5 minutes later, the whole beach is with them dancing. Like something I would love to see is that maybe you could do some sort of experiment, like in the crowd or something. Like you start, oh my God, that guy is homeless. Like call the police, whatever. And then like you would have like maybe like I would go or something, and like I would tell my friends to like make it seem like, oh, like whatever. And like I would love to know if people would actually like join, and like you could have like a whole like spring jam in March without with Stuckey singing something.
Right. No, I think you might be right that there's this kind of energy that people pass on and other people gravitate to, and it kind of builds out. I've seen it when when I sometimes rap on the corner, people will do, so when I get down with a rap and I'm successful at it, I go, woo, right? And people are like, what is he doing that? And then you hear somebody go, woo, and then someone will go, woo, woo. Or if one person stops and videotapes, like comes close to me, because most people are like, that dude, I'm not getting close. But someone will come up and videotape, or, hey, let's take a selfie, then they're all like, it's like, it's a kind of a thing. They feel like, oh, I've been given permission to do this. So I definitely think that if you designed an experiment and you wanted me to participate and help you out, then I'd do that, because I think you could probably generate a lot of.
Okay, let's do it. I actually want to do it.
Okay.
Like, I've been thinking a lot about that. So with some friends last year, we were joking around or something, and like we were gonna make someone like supposed to be famous, and like we're gonna get a bunch of people to follow him, and he would be running. Everyone would be like taking pictures and everything, because that happens all the time,
Yes,
like, in malls and stuff like that. Like, oh my God, who is that? And everyone just goes. It's like, oh, it's this person. Oh, okay. And like they don't even care. They're just like on their phones taking pictures, just to like whatever. And like I don't know, like that's usually.
So you're right now, what you're doing is creating a marketing campaign for me to expose people to Stuckey, because the Beatles and all those groups, you said they would hire groupies to kind of go, ah! And once that started, everyone's like, who is that? Who is that? You're exactly right. So now you got to help me.
Oh, no. I've been wanting to do that all the whole time.
Okay.
And people know you. People have seen you around.
Right.
Like, people know you. And somehow, like, if you get a bunch of people, like, I actually want to do it. So I'm gonna call some friends, and get some people, and like we're gonna have like this group of people, like, hey,
yeah. So you have to. So what you have to do it though, like at a time and a place where other people can kind of join in. I notice here, there's only 10 minutes between classes.
Yeah.
So that means like you don't even have time to stop and talk to the professor after class. I'm like, hey, I want some student engagement. We got our next class. We got to go. So I used to be able to do it on campus, because we had time, and then people would join, So I had my class outside one day, and they were, people stopped, they started taking pictures, and like, oh my gosh. So I think we can do it. Just generate a lot of energy around it.
Okay, I'll think about it.
Okay.
I think maybe like around 6 or 7 or something like that would be like the perfect time, because
Okay.
I'm like on a sunny day or something.
Okay.
We like actually. Like, let's not think about it too much. I think we've actually do tomorrow. Tomorrow might work. So I'll call some friends, whatever.
Okay.
And like, I would love to see what it's like. That's like, I mean, to me, that's like, like going back to the question, like fun.
Yeah.
Like doing stuff like that, it's just like insanely fun.
Well, the other thing too, I think about it, and people, it sounds like we're coming up with this ploy and this crazy thing, but like people are sometimes looking for a space or place to be inspired, and when other people are having a good time, then people tend to have a good time, and when they have a good time, then people feel better. So I see it as a way to kind of inject some inspiration into the UIUC community. So
exactly that, and it's like any party, right? Like any party, right, or whatever. If there's someone dancing, no one's gonna go. But like if there's like dancing people will go. And another example, nothing to do with it, like this type of examples, is that in a lot of businesses, like startups, when, like, for example, let's say that you create something like Reddit or something like OfferUp or something where you need like the two-way relationship. When you're starting something, you're not gonna have the people, but what they do is that the founders or the employees themselves, they are kind of playing this game by like with themselves, like, oh, I posted this and they bought it, and like, so they create the flywheel.
Right.
The flywheel. And then like when you create this flywheel, then you can have all these crazy things that would not be possible.
Yeah.
And that's where, fake until you make it could come into the game, because that's something I found so interesting, how mimetic humans are. Have you heard of mimetic theory by René Girard?
No.
So this guy from Stanford, and I think he'll be one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th and the 21st, maybe 20th century. But people have no idea who that is. But this guy, basically, his theory was that we want what other people want. We desire other people's desires. And it has been like replicated, and like Facebook has used that a lot. It's really like niche thing that is kind of going around. And we can use those same principles to actually do good things in the world. Like you said, inspire people, like do things. Like maybe someone watching this will inspire to, do something like this, or like actually do what they want. And something we see in our lives is that we see few people who are doing something that they want. We see a lot of people who are just doing something because they want, doing something because of it. Like, I don't know, that just drives me crazy how many people are just doing things because of a resume, or because they want a job, or because of something. Like it's almost like you do X in order to get Y. But why don't you just go get Y? And that's something that it just drives me insane. It's something I think a lot about all the time, because of how humans are very tricky, but you can engineer
in some
them
ways they're tricky. I agree.
to actually do good things and not just be followed by quote unquote bad things.
Yeah. So in many ways, I think you're right. Some ways they're tricky, but then they're also very predictable, right? How they respond. So I think it's interesting if you can figure out a way to inspire people in a collective sense. If you can figure that out and do it consistently. I like the idea. I think that people do want like you said, the fame, the fortune, the good, the well-being of other people, because we always are looking at other people and comparing our lives to evaluate like whether we have a worthwhile life. I will be very honest with you that until that student asked me to do the rapping, I never ever thought that rapping on the corner would be so cathartic, so uplifting, so inspirational. And not just to me. There are people that tell me all kinds of stuff that's related to that for me to feel that way. So, but that's because people see you and they're like, I wish I could do what he's doing. Like, what do I have to do that, right? And then they try to figure out a way to do it. So I think you're right. We do desire to have the success or whatever other people have, and it kind of drives us in ways. At least that's the way I think about it. I remain aspirational as a professional sociologist, so I have hopes and dreams related to that. But at this point in my life, I also feel like that I live a pretty balanced life. And that's probably more enjoyable to me than being so focused on having success in the field that I'm just completely driven by that. So I think balance really, really works for me now.
So you said you were a performer like since you were a child, right? And you enjoyed performing and dancing, singing. So was there ever a point in your life where you considered maybe music to be like the career you wanted to pursue?
So it's funny. I never. So my wife will tell you now that I can't sing. So and I take her word for it. But I do know bad singing when I hear it. But I played the guitar when I was younger, like maybe 10, and I didn't play it. I played at it. So my mom got it for me, and instead of reading the book and picking up chords, I'm like, boom, 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 whatever, right? And then I took a few lessons and I was learning chords or whatever. And what happened was that I didn't necessarily feel inspired by that, but I had a younger brother. He was 3 at the time that I'm doing this, and he would sit next to me and sing. And now he's this fabulous, fantastic, classically trained opera singer, but he does this whole thing called operatronics or hip hop opera. Like he's really, really good. And, I see a part of me and what I might have been inspired to do had I had real talent, because he's really talented in my estimation. If I really, if I had the wherewithal to figure out how to develop this talent. But I wasn't very disciplined about it. I just wanted to play at it. So there was never a point in time where I'm like, hey, I want to do this. And definitely not a point in time since I've been a professor, because people always ask me, oh, if they came to you right now with a contract, would you sign a contract and go? And I'm like, no. Like you get 1 million plays on Spotify, that translates into $3,000. You're not making a lot of money off 1 million plays on Spotify. Like, just think about that for a second, right? Certainly I make more money than that in a month. So like this is the idea is to pursue it that way as a livelihood. I don't think my family would appreciate me giving up stability and doing something like that. Besides, there are enough people that rap, enough people that create music. I can find my space as a person that engages music in a different kind of way. So never anything professional. I just really do it as an aside, and I've been doing it for many years now.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because like music has its own place in your life, and maybe doing it professionally might make you even want to like hate it, or you don't know, like you might feel a pressure to do it once you start doing it professionally.
People have said to me, because I told you I engaged so many different people on the street corners.
Right.
They said you should do a research project where you're studying how people are engaging with you. And I said, but if I did it that way, then I'd have to do it. Right? Remember, I told you I go out when I feel it.
Right.
But then if I were doing research on it, I have to go out and like pay attention to it. And
right.
So you're right. I think it would make it more of a burden.
Exactly.
Than it would be if I just continue to do it this way.
Yeah. Has music been like, has like singing or starting to sing helped you be a better sociologist, or how has it helped you understand people more? I know you'd see a lot of people around you when you're singing, but.
So I think they connect in that if I weren't observant before, that when I'm on the streets, there's a heightened sense of vulnerability. So sometimes streets can be dangerous. It's something as simple as, rapping and being in the zone and stepping off the edge of the curb and a car hitting you. It can be dangerous if you're not aware. So I think that the awareness, observational skills, they all go together, and they actually heighten when I'm actually in the field or the zone when I'm actually doing it. So it's really, they go together. I don't think that one has made me better than the other. I've always engaged, or I've always been in the place where people are doing things in public. And so I've always enjoyed that and been aware of that and thought about that and seen weird things, strange things, dangerous things. And this only puts me in a space where I see it in a different kind of way.
In all these years you started, like you've been singing, what has been like one fun encounter, like one fun incident that you still remember to this day?
Oh, okay. So Chicago. I'm in Chicago and I'm on a corner and I'm rapping. Back to the stage. Woo! And this old lady, must have been 80 something, in a walker, comes next to me. So somebody's taking her out on a walk. There's a nursing home over there. They're taking her out on the walk. And I'm rapping. Oh, and she comes up to me. She's shaking her look. I'm like, oh my gosh! Like that's what So that was one of the most fascinating things I've ever had happen to me. And then the other thing was, there's been so many things, but another thing is when I'm rapping, people have dogs in their car. The dogs. You guys have dogs?
No.
Okay. Well, the dogs. Okay, so the dog is following me around. The head is staying on me. All the way, the car will go way past me. The dog is still looking back at me. And I just think that's so cool. I think the dog gets it. I think little kids get it. I used to have a little 5-year-old that would come up to me every day, and his mom would bring him over so he could fist bump me. and then like older people, they just smile. And you know what it is? I think they know, like, as you get older, like, it's like you realize, like, life, like, goes away. Like, it's short. And that, like, he's having so much fun. So they understand what that means to be breaking free from that after having lived their life so long. That's the thing I take from that. But, yeah, I've had all kinds of, a person came up to me in the corner with a guitar and said, let's do it. I'm like, oh, this is not what this, So you have all kinds of things that happen. And I had been taking notes, not with the prospect of doing a study, but just because I journal, right? And so there are things that happen all the time that are pretty interesting to me. Somebody said I was trying to rob a bank before, like yeah, but I mean it's stuff like that. This pretty weird and interesting at the same time. So,
and you represent the new definition of coolness. I think, before, coolness was doing what other people thought it was like doing. But I think coolness, or at least I try to change change societal norms of what cool means. I think my definition of coolness is when people are doing something because of that reason.
Yeah. I think that's because I will tell you, I'm not. So a lot of students gravitate to me. I'm older, but I'm not doing what I'm doing to get them to gravitate toward me. I'm doing it because I really, literally enjoy doing it, and maybe that's why they gravitate toward me. But it really is one of those things where, and people say, "Oh man, that's really cool," right? Just like the way you describe it, right? I mean, people have asked, what's my intention? What's my purpose? And I'd say, I'm doing it. One guy says, what are you trying to get? The other line is, what are you selling? Nothing. I'm doing what I'm doing, So people think all kinds of things when I'm out there. I've had people give me money before. That's always funny.
Do you take it?
So, well, okay, it's kind of hard if somebody's driving and they throw a $1 bill out and it lands on the ground. It's like, no. But I had somebody come to me on the corner. I'd go, hey, I don't need money. So it's just one of those things where just people they're confused by what it means, which always means I get to interact with police officers all the time. It's an opportunity to see what's going. Some people would say, well, that's kind of scary. Within a few minutes, they recognize this dude is sane and he's just having a good time. So,
have you ever performed in another country, or have you ever thought about performing in some other place?
So I have a line on one of my songs that says, "Back to the States, feeling great, because my fans overseas went apes, gorillas, even in Manila," right? So I'm thinking Manila might be a place for me to go and perform somewhere. But I mean, it's not like that, because I've had the shows and I put them all together for the most part. And it takes a lot of energy, and you need other people to kind of help you. And if you have a hard time doing it, say, even if I wanted to do one in Champaign or Urbana, I'd have to get the equipment, or, get a sound person, or, do all this work. And so it seems like to me to fathom thinking about doing it in a foreign country, you'd have to have some success and be well established enough where you can connect with people who would know who to connect you with there. So it's not something I have actively thought about doing. Is it something I would do? Man, yeah. Probably. If you want to hear me, I'll come and perform. That's the way it works. So that's the way it works.
And you're way too young. You have way more years.
Yeah.
You never know. You never know. This interview could be the day when you realize, and you never know. Somehow, maybe you'll just break away and you'll become the next.
It could be someone
Stuckey.
could see your podcast and say, hey, that guy's great. Can we tell us more about him? How did you connect with him? And then it could go from there. You could also blow up. You say, oh, we had him on one day. 5 years later, oh, we had him on when this is what, and then your videos blow up. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like always a possibility. There's always something that could happen that's positive from it. So that's why I stay in the moment doing it. I really enjoy it.
We were talking earlier about how you're always open to new opportunities, and you like we contacted you and you immediately replied to us like, yes, let's have a conversation. I don't see that a lot in people these days. Like people stay very confined. Like I mean, there's a good reason behind that as well. Like there are a lot of like fishy things like people do and they contact people with. So it's good to say like stay alert, but how do you how did you incorporate this in your, or how have you incorporated this in your lifestyle to always be open to new opportunities?
Yeah, so I would say always is a strong word.
Okay, yeah.
But like I like to think about. So I have one rule, and basically the rule is this: if the thing that's being required of me as an opportunity doesn't stretch me so far that I can't do what I'm supposed to do, then I'll take advantage of the opportunity. So that goes with the number of students I work with. If I work with 5 students, I dedicate to them. Like I'm pouring into them as much as they can call me or contact me anytime, and I'm pouring into them. But I wouldn't do 10 students because I couldn't do the same way that I do 5. So I wouldn't stop and go on tour, right? But sure, if I can go to Chicago or if I can go to Texas or LA or something over the weekend and perform and come back, oh, sure, I would do that. But it's not what, as long as I can keep doing what I'm doing, because as we know, the bread and butter is from what I do professionally. And the byproducts are starting. I mean, I received a royalty check before. That's pretty cool, but it's a small check. It's not big enough. My wife is, you're right. Remain optimistic for now. And in fact, I could end my life here. At some point, my life could end here, and people would actually then listen to the music. You know, you're right. I'm creating something that people may be fascinated by many years from now. You know, and I don't do it for that. I just do it because this marks the time and space that I'm in at this point in time. So the album reflects this recent time, and the album before that reflected the time before that. And so you're just documenting your life and enjoying what you're doing creatively.
What do you usually talk about, or try to sing about in your?
Yeah. So I think most of what I talk about, they're my personal stories. And people will hear things in them and not know exactly what I'm talking about. But I definitely know what I'm talking about. I would say the biggest difference between people who are really popular with what they do is that they talk about things that other people relate to. And rap is a very young person's thing. So if you're talking about the kinds of things, money, you know, material things, those kind, for a certain number of people, that's important, and they connect to it. You know, if I made a rap that dealt with the kinds of issues that engineers have, the population is shrunk, right? So people, if they don't know the backstory, sometimes they can't connect to the music the same way. But I have a VIP list, and the people on the VIP list know, and I give a backstory to it, so they really enjoy the music or connect with the music. And so that's really my life story. This most recent album is called Vocals on Extendo. And extendo is a rap term that they use when they're talking about ammunition and firearms and extra ammunition, whatever. But my idea of vocals on extendo is because I'm experimenting more with auto-tune in this particular album, and also because there was someone here at UIUC who had a problem with me rapping in front of alma mater, and so they would call over to my department and say, "Hey, your professor is over here rapping and it's disturbing us." And because I see the space by alma mater where the band plays, where the preachers preach with microphones, and where people are protesting, and I'm like, this is a free public kind of space, right? And so instead of like shrinking away from that and kind of hiding my vocals, I turn them up on extendo so you can hear them loud, right? You know, so that's the idea. And so all of the songs in there kind of sort of deal with that overall topic. And then there are other little bits and pieces about my life and other little things that pop in there. And some things people can relate to, like, so I even mentioned Putin in one of the songs, and it's like, you know, just recognizing that I say that my students, I'm messy when I'm testing. Students say, like Putin, I'm oppressing, right? So it's like this, the connection, right? So, and the students can relate to that line, right? And then people who know the way that the political climate right now can also relate to the kind of the oppressive nature of what's going on. But it's not, most of the music is not like that, where people just get it right away. So, yeah.
Interesting. So you mentioned you talk a lot about yourself, but I would say, away from music, what do you think about self?
Yeah. So there's one thing that I'm always conscious of, and that's irrespective of where I am, that there's a sense sense of perception of me as a black person, as a black man, that I'm always aware of. And sometimes because of my status as a professor, I'm privileged in ways that other people are not. And sometimes when I'm reminded that I'm a black man also, or first and foremost, it's a shock, right? Because you get so comfortable with being a professor and having status at a university, and then you're shocked back into the reality that some things don't work the same way for you as they do for other people. Some things can be a little bit more contentious or dangerous for you than they are for other people. And in fact, the song Clearer, I See Myself Clearer, was a reminder that I was, you can be intoxicated by the status. You're around students at a university that have adoration for you and what you know and what you teach and how energetic you are, how much you care. But then there are also people that can remind you that this is not that exact thing that you've become comfortable in this, but this is not the reality for you. And so that comes through a lot in the music that I do, that, just the recognition that there's some things that happen to me just because I'm a black man that wouldn't necessarily happen. So those things are in the forefront. And again, they may be coded, so people wouldn't, I wouldn't, necessarily say it right off the bat, but there's some things that are really clear that, I'm reminded of. So those are the kinds of things that I deal with. And I'll say, as a professor, I teach a course called Race and Ethnicity. And one of the biggest challenges is that it's a course where you're constantly thinking about how to help students understand the dynamics between different racial groups in America. But even in the university context, when you're trying to help students understand that, you're still experiencing what it's like to be a person that's not, that's a minority in the context of here, and still you're actually dealing with that when you're teaching students, when you're with your colleagues, so it's really one of those things where it's emotional double weight. I don't know if that makes sense. That you recognize and you continue to kind of feel, and that comes out in the music too. So, yeah. So when I'm not here, I can't be outside myself completely. There's certain things that I know that come with being this. I mean, when I talk about police, I say things like the first time I ever went out here, there was nobody here around campus, nobody around. Police. The second day I went out, police. The first time on campus in front of alma mater in this school year, police, right? So those are the people are calling on you, because it's like, that's not just a person who's homeless out of their mind doing. There's something wrong. There's some kind of threat, right? And so that's when I'm reminded of those things, and I can't separate those necessarily. But I mean, it's not everybody can do what I do, and wake up every day feeling good about being able to try to do it. And it's always students that provide inspiration. They say, "Oh, you said something, and that resonated with me." Right, good. Whew, okay, somebody's uplifting me, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Something I think about is the idea of self, and some people think that when people don't have a sense of self, that's the root of all human evil. There was another person, C.S. Lewis, which is a philosopher, and he wrote an essay about. He called it ignorance, and it was this idea about how humans, throughout their life, they're always trying to be part of this ring of people, and a lot of the times, they don't. The only reason why they want to be part of this group of people or ring or whatever you want to call it, is because they want to know, like, they are doing it because of other people are in the thing, but what they don't realize is that the reason why the ring exists, or why people want to join the ring, is because other people want to join the ring. And like, it's almost that idea of like, that when people are doing all these things and they don't have a sense of self, to the point where they're almost selfless, that are going through life with a sense of self. Is that something you think about like, how do you think about the idea of a self? The idea of like, for example, the U.S. is a country where throughout history we've had a lot of people with a very strong idea of self. When people who create these enterprises and inventions or musicians, basketball players, they have this great idea of self that they are willing to go against anyone. Like Kobe Bryant was a great example. He would always say that he didn't really have any friends. He didn't really have this connection with people because his thing was playing basketball, nothing else. A very strong sense of self, where a lot of basketball players, for instance, would be like, yeah, but I want to be with my friends, I want to be with my family. Like for Kobe Bryant, like, no, myself is basketball. Basketball is myself. How do you think about such a question?
So I definitely think I admire people. Well, okay, so in order for you to have success in many ways, that self is a dominant, especially if you're a visionary and see things beyond where people are at that point in time. You have to, like, there's something about what you're doing makes you feel like these people don't really understand what I'm doing, right? And I admire people who have had success, especially when they embody their self embodies that. You name Kobe Bryant, I could name Michael Jordan. There are people who embody that, and I admire it. At the same time, I recognize, which is also fascinating to me, I recognize that I am not the person that I see those people as, right? I say, if you want to have this greatness, you have to have the self that you've just described, but I don't see myself that way, right? Which is interesting, because I said before, I remain aspirational, right? And but you don't see yourself as having these. People have told me this. I didn't say this. I didn't understand. Remember, both times I told you, someone else said you're brilliant or you're smart and whereas someone like Kanye is like, I know I'm not, that his self is embodied everything. So somebody has to trigger that for me. And people have said to me that I'm visionary, and I don't understand what they mean by that, except that I'm entrepreneurial. I see possibilities. I think of ways to get to the possibilities, but I don't work doggedly at it in the same way as those other people, because that would require me to live a less balanced life in a more focused life, right? In a very kind of rigid kind of way. So I don't see myself in that any activity totally engulfs myself. And I'm not engrossed in it to a degree that I can't see or picture other things, other possibilities that I would make space and time for. And in fact, the older you get, the more you realize, yeah, this is good if you're just trying to do a certain thing and you're trying to make this thing a certain way and you're trying to make people, this is you're just so driven by it. But as you get older, you also realize that time is fleeting. And so it might be better to spend a little more time with my wife or my family, or doing something with students, or, instead of just driving, right? So I don't think of myself as totally engrossed in it.
The thing is, I would argue that you do have a very strong self. And when I say self, I don't mean like self being like super focused, like, only that. It's kind of hard to describe because it's something that usually you just feel it and you cannot really describe it. But self means, I think, one is that you're very obsessed with the things you're doing for that reason only, for the sake of it. And another definition of self, it's someone who, when they create their artistic work, whatever they're doing, whether research or music or whatever, you can see the person through it. And in a lot of times, a common example I think a lot about is modern architecture. This building have no story. It has no sense of self. And in the past, you would see these buildings, and you would know exactly who built it, right, and the story would tell you. Like, you would see the person in the building. Like now, it's very abstract. You don't see anything. Oh, just a building with whatever. So, number one, self. When you very strong the idea of self. You do things because of it. Number two, I could see you through the expression.
Okay, that's fair. I think that's fair. I think it's fair. I would say certainly if there was a continuum of self versus non-self, I'm closer here than here, right? So yeah, I would say that. I think teaching is another place and space where people see me. Like it takes a little bit because the institution requires a certain kind of relationship between the students and professor, but over time, the students see right through it. And people who have never had a class with me don't understand why my students are. They can see me through the craft that I'm doing. They approach me and say, they connect with me different. They don't understand that, but once you take the class, then I get it. I get it now. I understand that because they can see me through what I'm doing. Yeah, so I would agree with that.
Or they watch this video.
They might not be able to tell you anything from this video, but they could.
Yeah,
they could.
Yeah. What advice do you have for someone young in high school or college that is driven and is going to, almost about to start this world? Yeah. What advice would you give them, or what advice should they ignore?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if I would say ignore advice. I think there's one thing. Like, I would say that when you pursue something, you have to start off by being open to an idea. And then you may not know how to do anything or, just be open to the idea. But once that is triggered in you, that you can begin to pursue it. And it doesn't matter if you tiptoe to it or if you dive in. Once you get in it and it feels right, then you know you're in the right space to pursue. So I would say to be open to possibilities. Just be open to possibilities. Someone can trigger something in you and then take a chance with it. And you don't have to run into it. You can tiptoe into it and it'll pull you in and you'll know you're there. Yeah, so that would be the advice I have.
You only have to get started and you will see how everything just lays out in front of you.
I think that's very true for the talk show we're doing right now because neither of us have any experience doing this, and we just had an idea and the will to do something about it. So I would say we took a dive, and I think the path is clearing out for us.
Well, I appreciate you guys taking a dive because this gives me another opportunity to reach an audience that I might not have reached, to inspire someone that I might not have inspired otherwise. So I really do appreciate you guys inviting me on.
Yeah, we are not done yet,
okay.
But to end our section here, we have a little section, overrated, underrated.
Okay. Someone
asks you questions like underrated, overrated. So
okay. I don't get to say what is the judgment about. You're just gonna give me two things, and I just say underrated or overrated.
Right. I mean, you can talk about it if you want. But,
okay. Well, I'll stick to the script. Let's go ahead.
No. I mean, there's no script. Usually when we ask people, like underrated, and they say like, okay, overrated, and then they explain it. So it's not like one word, there's no script. There's only fun stuff.
Okay.
So the first one is making other people think you're crazy. Overrated or underrated?
I would say underrated if that's your intention. It's not my intention, so I think just living your life is fine, but I think it's underrated if that's your intention. So,
yeah. You were at the University of Chicago, and I think one of the very influential. There were a lot of psychologists that were very influential, and that's where you have the idea of the ego, ultra ego, and that idea. So let's ask you the idea of the ego and the ultra ego. Sigmund Freud. That person, overrated or underrated?
Freud.
Yeah, Freud.
I would say, so I don't like the polls. I would say he's properly rated.
Okay.
we've given his ideas credence. We've talked about them through the years. The ideas have lasted a long time. So properly rated. Okay. I hope that's acceptable to you. Okay. Yeah, I would say that. Okay, next one.
Yeah, is there anyone in particular that has had an impact on you, like in the fields like sociology and psychology?
So I would say W.E.B. Du Bois,
Okay.
and that's more recently than before, because for you all who are not in the field, you don't know that his work was kind of shunned and rejected. He was also a black man, so we can think about the dynamics related to that. And now people are starting to understand his brilliance. I read some of his early work, and I was blown away with what he was able to do, especially with the resources that he had, or the limited resources that he had. So he's been influential in the kind of work that I do now, and thinking about the broader picture on how those little things I talk about with respect to groups interacting in urban nightlife, how that's related to broader picture things, not only with a city, but also a country, also a government, also an economy. So yeah, he's been somebody I found very influential.
Yeah, he was also the first black person who got a PhD
from Harvard. Yeah,
from
that's
Harvard.
right.
So that was, I do remember reading.
Yeah,
it was really impressive, and
yeah.
it wasn't a lot. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. Oh, was that it?
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, we were just talking.
Don't you? Okay, yeah. Give me some
yeah.
more. Give me some more overrated,
Yeah,
underrated.
yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to knock one out the park for you.
So the other one is, you mentioned that a lot of the things that you are like doing, like the creative like part, is something that a lot of like very few people like have, like this creative like inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And like making like music, which is a very strong part of you.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that impacts you a lot in what you do, and opens your perspective to many ways. So I'm not gonna ask you about making music overrated or underrated,
Mm-hmm.
but rap as a form of music expression, overrated or underrated?
I think underrated, because people see that rap is spoken and that most anyone can speak. And so that sometimes what people are actually doing in their rap is underrated. Like I always say that about some of the things I say, that people, they don't really know, they can't see it the way that I see it. And so they don't rate it, they just hear a phrase, like, and they don't really connect it the same way that I do. So I think it's easy to underrate, especially when people who are striving to be popular artists do it using the things that most people are aware of, like money and sex and those kinds of things, and they rap about those things consistently. People are like, creativity is not so great, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's underrated. There's some interesting things that are going on vocally with people that are doing it, but also in the way that they're using the words. I think most of us don't see that as a very creative thing, and so I think it's underrated.
Yeah, and I do think like rap as a whole has been growing a lot in breaking into the culture, like a lot more and more and more, where it's almost like mainstream now.
Yeah, and so which means people like, so students will say, hey, we're going to do a podcast. Let's open a podcast with a musical. Let's do a rap, right? And then when you do it, it's just like, it's a rap. But even your creativity might be expressive of something deeper, but most people don't catch that. They just say, they're two students who have a podcast that are rapping, right? So it's not. I think it's underrated in that regard. And it may be, I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
When you were trying to figure out what you wanted to do, you were trying to do many things. But something I'm interested in hearing is getting a PhD. Underrated or overrated?
Okay. I'm going to say both, and I'll tell you why. It's underrated because there's an opportunity for you to learn about thinking through problems in your own head. So people don't value that. that's underrated. It's overrated because some people have a sense of self-importance once they have it. And so people are like, he got a PhD. So it's kind of an overrated thing if you have this self-inflated importance about it, I think. But as an intellectual pursuit for myself, like learning to think about things in a different kind of way and appreciating thinking about those things simply for the pursuit of it, yeah, it's underrated because it was powerful for me. Always been a person that thought and contemplated, but powerful in that it magnified it. So, overrated and underrated.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think it really depends on the type of field you're doing, because at some fields you just academia could get interesting, as you know, I'm sure.
Right.
You've written 3 books, and you're writing, and I'm sure you'll continue to write more and more and more. And one of the books you explained that how when like LeBron James graduated from high school, he went straight to the NBA, and that inspired a lot of kids to do so. And then something that also that you explore in the book was the idea of what it means to be a man. So, with your definition of being a man, they explain in the book, like, is that definition underrated or overrated?
So, if I'm understanding, what I'm focused on is the idea of being a man as defined in the book. It's the way the young men talk about it and the way they think about it. I think the power of that to transform a young person is underrated, so that the young men learn how to pursue social mobility through sport, but the process itself can help them grow in such a way that it's underrated. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Nightlife, underrated or overrated?
So I'm getting old, and I would say, are you talking about the book, or are you talking about?
We can do both.
Okay. The book, I think it's underrated. I think people have totally missed it. Like I just, don't get me started on that. I think people really, if you look at that book and you see the ideas that I'm talking about and you think about them abstractly, their application works in a lot of contexts. And I think people just completely miss that relationship. Part of the responsibility of making sure that relationship is clear is on me. And certainly I could have done a better job, but I think it is underrated for sure. I always say that the 3 books I've written, the second one, Living Through the Hoop, High School Basketball, Race and American Dream, is my favorite. Because I'm an African-American male, I play basketball, it's just all connected. Urban Nightlife is by far my best sociology, and again, I think it's underrated. Nightlife itself, overrated. Actually being in the public sphere, because there's a cycle which you see over and over again, and people do the same things over and over again, and there's very little use benefit that comes back to them. So you go out on the weekend, you burn money, you intoxicate, you do make silly mistakes, right? So it's overrated because people say, hey, let's have fun, let's go. And then people are driven to that, but it's overrated, I think.
So why do people do it?
If I had to answer, the question is that for a lot of people, it's an opportunity to escape. Sometimes it's just purely social. That's what other people are doing, so you do it. I think those are simple ways to think about it, and I think those are 2 of the simplest ways.
You know what another fun thing would be to do? Is that, like a lot of people say, like, oh, I go to the bars or whatever because I have nothing else to do, and all my friends are going, so you might as well go, even though you don't want to do the thing. Another thing that would be interesting to do is that we set up in a library where you get 100,000, like a bunch of people to just go read books. And maybe that will become the cool thing where people will go.
Man, you're optimistic.
He's written a book about it.
Yeah.
About optimism.
I mean, that's more like a funny one. I'm not sure how that would work, but it'd be interesting to see if people actually, oh, everyone's reading books now. Like it's a cool thing. Like let's go.
Yeah, it would be good if we could really. No, I do share this. That it'd be really good if we could figure out something that people could buy into and really enjoy. That'd be positive and good for a lot more people. So definitely.
Yeah, because like college is an amazing place to explore ideas, and people are not doing that. They're either doing what you said or
focused,
trapped.
or focused on just like kind of doing work,
and in reality,
yeah,
being able to just figure out what you want to do, like figure out what gets you excited, what makes you fully alive. I think that's what the purpose of that, and we get that experience through doing stuff like that and talking to people like you, and just really doing things we want for that sake.
Yeah, well, that's good.
So. Thank you so much for coming and for your time. It was really amazing to hear all of your research, your life story, and how you never know. One day you might be in Japan, maybe in Europe. You're singing along, and I will be able to tell my kids one day. You know that guy who's really famous, who broke all the records, Grammys, and everything. I got to meet him one day.
Yeah, we'll see about it. I really appreciate you guys having me. And your podcast right now is underrated. But one day it'll be well regarded. That's right.
All right.
Thank you so much.
And for everyone watching, if you have any questions for Professor Buford, please put them in the comments. We'll try to get it to him and get them answered. I'm sure you would have picked him a word of advice from whatever he said, and we're curious to know what you think about it. So stay curious, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Yeah, one more thing. Just tell them when they see me rapping on the street, just come up to me and give me a fist bump. That way I know they know what I'm doing, and they know I'm not crazy, and I can keep doing what I'm doing and enjoying myself. Yeah, absolutely.
And to end, we'll play one of my favorite songs from the new album.
Oh, hey, energy.
What if you make him sing?
Nope. Nope.
You're right here.
You think the price is right, but if the price is right, I'm about to keep it tight. That's right. Okay.
All right,
I appreciate that, man. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you.